this is Steve Collins, a partner with the Palomar Group in Augusta, Georgia, an investment sales firm out of Augusta, Georgia. And joining us on this week's Palomar Perspective is Chris Ressa, COO at DLC Management. Chris has been with DLC since 2007 when he joined as VP of Leasing for the Midwest. In 2013, he was promoted to Senior VP of Leasing for the Northeast and Midwest. And in 2016, he became Senior VP of the entire leasing department. And then in 2018, he was promoted to COO, which is his current role. Chris is from New Jersey, still lives in New Jersey, and he is a graduate of Rutgers University, and where he was a member of the wrestling team. So, Chris, thank you for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, so,
happy to be here. Awesome, excited.
Good. Well, I know we've over the past few months, everybody's kind of talked a lot about the pandemic and everything that we've been going through. So I think we've all talked a lot about that. So I'd kind of like to touch on kind of where we go forward and where you see things going forward for our time here. But first, why don't you tell us a little bit about DLC, and then how you got there, and then what your career progression has been like since you've been there?
Yeah, so I started my career at Sherwin-Williams corporate real estate. So going out, finding new locations for them to open up stores, relos, renewals. And so got the tenant perspective. I realized that I loved real estate. Sherwin-Williams is a fantastic company. I just loved real estate more than the paint business. So I wanted to go work for a real estate company. I went to a company in New York called Ashkenazi Acquisitions. I was there for a short time, and then a recruiter called and about a leasing position at DLC. I went there, and I've been there ever since. And at DLC, I kind of grew up through the leasing ranks, and I was fortunate to have properties in many different markets, work on a variety of different deals. And that really helped me grow. And as you're growing up in the leasing ranks, you started to get visibility into other aspects of the business. So I learned a lot in working with my construction team and the property management team and the ins and outs of those. I learned a lot about on the debt and equity side of the business, because leasing deals impact those decisions. And so all that kind of helped, make me a better real estate professional. And then in 2011, 12 is when I got into the people management side. And now my job is just as much, if not more, people than it is real estate. And I had a passion for that. And that's what kind of grew me into the role that I'm in today. Because I continue to focus on leadership and learn about leadership and network with, leaders. And, I feel like I had a good framework from, you talk about athletics a lot, and all the great coaches and mentors that I had along the way in helping me try to become a positive leader. And so that's kind of how my career got me to where I got to.
Nice. I think growing up and doing the leasing or starting off and doing the leasing of your career, I think had to be extremely beneficial for where you are today. When me and my two partners, when we first started, leasing was something that we did as well. And after having shifted to the investment sales side of things, you really see how important strong leases are to the value of a center. If you have a bad lease, it can seriously prevent the owner from maximizing the value on a sale. So I think you probably agree that leasing is kind of the lifeblood of our industry.
Totally is, and it's definitely a very important part at DLC. And you had mentioned, what's going on, what is DLC doing? So we typically buy value-oriented shopping centers. So we have a internal platform. We really don't third party anything. And so we use the platform to create value at assets. And so we have internal leasing, construction, property management, and we're buying things that typically need to be repositioned. And so there's typically a lot of leasing needs to be done when we buy it. And there's typically a lot of redevelopment, moving pieces, construction, and all that stuff. So it's a driving force for the industry. It's a driving force for DLC, no doubt.
Sure. Since you've been at DLC, how have you seen the company and your portfolio progress from 2007 till today?
Yeah, I think the company has grown from a small, medium-sized business to we're working and are, growing to enterprise scale from just sheer size. It's 120 employees today, and that's grown significantly since I've been there. And the portfolio has shifted in the types of assets. We work on a lot more assets that have higher asset value today. We bought a lot of $5-10 million deals in the 90s and early 2000s, and we pivoted as we scaled up. One of the ways we scaled up was just not in the number of assets, because in the recession to now, our number of assets has not changed all that much. We've bought and sold a bunch. What's changed dramatically is the asset value and the square footage. And so we're at I think 18 million square feet, something like that today. And I'm not going to pretend to know the asset value today, but the value that we were, we're not looking at a lot of small deals today. Even if we know that we can execute on them and we can create value, we're really focused and strategic about making sure that we find larger deals in both asset value and size. It takes just as much human capital sometimes to run a 400,000 square foot center as it does a 100,000 square foot center.
Sure.
And so if you're using the platform to add value, you have a productivity challenge if you're buying a bunch of small deals, right? The way to leverage productivity and to maximize human capital, which is, in our view, what enhances the value at the assets. Buying larger deals was a pathway to do that.
Yeah. Now I know y'all have a good bit of grocery in your portfolio, but y'all also have non-grocery.
I would say we're about half and half of power grocery.
Yeah. So going forward,
I would say this, that we learned, while we might not have pure grocery, we have way more essential than we had realized than going into the pandemic.
That's kind of what, yeah. Okay.
We had a lot of, even though we had power, we still had essential, right? I had Target, Walmart, Costco, BJ's Wholesale Club, AutoZone, Harbor Freight Tools, Home Depot. I have essential, a lot of essential.
So that's kind of where I was going. So, everybody, kind of the prettiest girl at the dance has always been the grocery anchored retail center. Do you think going forward, do you think that mindset shifts somewhat from not just grocery, but to that essential retail being one of the most sought after kind of asset classes?
I would say, I'm going to answer this in a different way. I would say it depends on the buyer. I think that really, and I don't want to punt, but it depends on the buyer. At the end of the day, if it's passive income, then I think that as essential and grocery and as much income attributed to that at the property is probably what that buyer's looking for. I think you're going to see a multitude of things, right? I think you're going to see a lot of people try to seize value opportunities created by the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And so that might not be grocery, but there's yield in places where maybe there wasn't 6 months ago. And so, but I still think grocery anchored Walmart anchored will definitely be on the lower cap rates as it relates to in comparison to the other parts of retail.
Yeah, I know over the past few years, the power center space, cap rates have gone up. Buying pool of just prospects has gone down. I wonder if more groups and more companies will focus on kind of the essential power centers, I guess you could call it.
I think so. There's also it depends on how risk is relative.
Right.
So there is a cohort that likes a 20-year lease with a grocer, and 80% of the income at the property is attributed to the grocer, and the grocer has great credit, and therefore that's a low risk asset. There's an argument to be made that on the power center front, your risk is distributed because there's multi-tenants and no one tenant has enough income to tear the ship down.
Right.
Right. And so it depends on how you view risk, right? If you have a platform that can handle the moving pieces, then that might be where the value lies, because if the world goes this way and doesn't like that there's multiple anchors and it's not quote unquote, and I'm using air quotes for everyone out there, stable, well, that might be where the value is, because if you're looking at that as, well, actually that's lower risk because you don't have all your income attributed to one person. Right. Because one of the things that I always say, if you have a true neighborhood center and it's not a regional trade area and the grocer goes, well, you're redeveloping that asset. You know, there's who's your backfill.
Right. Yeah.
And I, as coming from the leasing end, I'm always looking like, if they go, who are the backfill opportunities? And even though it's stable, 20-year lease, grocer, great grocer, if the market moves and something happens and they decide to move across the street, even with term, well, now you have a vacant asset, and who would you put there? If it's a neighborhood center, you're not going to get the typical, all the guys you would get in a power center, because they're looking for the regional trade draw that you don't have in a neighborhood. So there's the risk of that happening might be lower because they have 20 years of lease term and they have a great balance sheet. But if that does happen, then I think the risk is changed.
Then you got problems.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned about how with power centers, your risk is more spread out over multiple tenants.
Right.
One challenge that we've seen with some of the power centers that we've worked on is that, while you're right, the co-tenancy issues, where if you say it's spread out, but if one of those tenants leave, one of those large anchors, junior anchors leaves, then it's kind of a domino effect, which all these co-tenancies kick in, and then your income goes down significantly. So kind of going forward, how do you think co-tenancy language changes? Do you think landlords are gonna push back on co-tenancy more and try and limit co-tenancy more? And do you think tenants are gonna give into that?
So a couple things. I think one, when I think of co-tenancy, and there's a deck on ICSC called Win-Win Co-Tenancy that I did, and a bunch of ICSCs. I taught that class for ICSC called Win-Win Co-Tenancy. And so to me, it's about there's a couple of things with co-tenancy that I think all too often, maybe investors, lenders, they just look at, well, there is a co-tenancy. And I think the prudent buyers start to look through as to, well, what is the co-tenancy? What constitutes the co-tenancy? Is it if one guy goes, then they're in co-tenancy? That's a challenge.
Yeah.
But if you have a power center of 10 and 3 guys have to go for the one tenant to be in co-tenancy, I think that's a different risk. And at the end of the day, I think that would impact a retailer, and therefore they have a good argument as to, if that does happen, I need to be on co-tenancy, rent, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
Then that's what constitutes the co-tenancy. Then there's what happens if there's a co-tenancy. And at some point, right, they go to a substitute rent, and then maybe have the right to terminate. But at some point, the penalty has to go away,
right,
and someone has to do something. And then there's how does the landlord cure if there is a co-tenancy? And I think it's about looking at all those factors of co-tenancy. If it's just that there is a co-tenancy, then you might be in the wrong business, because there's going to be co-tenancies in the leases. On a go forward, I think landlords will try to push back, but I think, at the end of the day, the tenants are looking for increased traffic at centers, and therefore they want open co-tenants. I think it's going to be an interesting dogfight as we go through, the next evolution of retail.
Yeah. No, you're certainly right. You're definitely right. There are definitely various degrees of co-tenancy in a center. And I wonder, one of the things I always wonder is, with so much more being done, a lot of tenants have the potential to terminate early if they don't meet a certain sales threshold. So I always wonder, with the shift to online and order online, pick up in the store, I wonder how the per square foot sales number calculation changes, because I feel like it's shifting away from just whatever is purchased in the store. That's what the per square foot sales is. It's kind of like the omni-channel, everything that's done via that store.
So I'll take that from a high level. So on the highest level, I think one of the myths in the headline news today is, at scale, retailers do not want to close stores.
Correct.
Right. I think that's what they want to keep them open, and potentially open more.
Yeah.
On the whole. So that's the first piece, right?
Yeah.
I think the second piece of that is the corporate national retailers who may have a sales kick. They are spreading their G&A cost across, at the corporate level, across stores. And so the more stores they close, the tighter that is. Mm-hmm. And so, more to the fact that they don't want to close stores. And then I think when it comes to the sales kick, I think the next thing I think about is, what does it take to kick, and what happens if they do? Oftentimes there's a penalty, right? And I would say it would have to be probably pretty ugly if a tenant had to pay back something akin to a year's worth of rent in order to kick, right? I don't think that's, in a cash preservation world, I don't know, if you're going to see that at scale based on a sales kick. There might be other reasons that they terminate. And then as it relates to online sales, this is an argument that's been going on for a while. And I don't think this argument's going away. We talk about it a lot. Other landlords and retailers talk about it a lot. ICSC's talking about it, is what gets attributed. I don't know that anyone has a clear answer to this today. And I think it's going to continue to morph of what sales get attributed to the stores. The ICSC put out the halo effect.
Right.
I think that, at least anecdotally, what I hear, more retailers are saying that when they open a store in a market, their online sales in that market grow. And when they close a store in a market, their online sales in that market close. And
Right.
so how that gets attributed to the store, time will tell. I will tell you something much more big picture, and not to go on tangents and get off topic.
No, feel free.
But one of the reasons we have to solve that problem is because there's challenges in retail today. And people often ask me, what's the biggest risk in retail? I think the biggest risk in retail is getting the most dynamic, talented people to enter the retail business. I don't talk to a lot of college kids who tell me that they want to be the store manager of you pick the retailer.
Right.
And with the challenges today, we need great people running stores. And if the store manager, this is compounded, but if the store manager who's bonused based on how well that store does is losing sales to online, we are going to struggle to continue to get the most dynamic, talented people to be running stores for American retailers. And so I think it's really a challenge that needs to be solved, and we're not there yet. And I think there's a lot of people working to try to figure it out. And there's definitely some pushing and tugging going on between landlords and retailers with that.
Yeah. What are some ideas you have on how you solve that? Because you're right. There's not, and even just in real estate in general, I feel, if you took a poll from a lot of college seniors, I don't think real estate would be on the top of their list of career choices or retail. So how do you think we help solve that problem?
And we're talking about the problem of people entering the business versus.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
So
getting the best people.
I think it comes down to, marketing, and I think it comes down to communicating with universities about the career path, right? I didn't know about the career path I'm on through college. I didn't know the industry existed. So I think the first step is letting people know that there is an industry. Obviously, they know about retailers and store managers. I think, it's about who you're looking for, right? Who are we looking for? We've got, massive evolution and massive challenge. We want someone who's excited to be a part of that. That's the person that you want running stores. Who's excited to face these new challenges. Yeah. If the person's like, ooh, tech's growing, I want to work for this cool new startup because it's just really fun and, they give free lunches and free dinners. I got that, but I think, it's the type of person that we need to think about who comes in. And I think the type of person we need to, and retail needs to market to, and retail real estate needs to market to, is someone who's looking to solve big challenges and who feels, great pride in being able to do that.
Yeah, I think you're right. Solving challenges and thinking and solving problems. I mean, that's one of the things that I like most about our industry is that you are always having to solve problems and you're having to think. You're not trying to think how to come up with the next great code, but you're for some app, but you're constantly having to solve problems and you're constantly having to think. That's a great point. What kind of over the next few years, kind of where do you see DLC going as far as their portfolio, and what you think that looks like over the next few years?
I think we are trying to grow and we're trying to get to a much larger scale. So I think that will mean more assets, but I think that will mean higher valued assets as well. I think the value of the portfolio will increase. And I think that, we're long in the industry and we are a believer in open air brick and mortar. And we think there's going to be opportunities and we're going to do our best to try and tackle those opportunities that come.
Nice. Um, let's like to shift gears a little bit. In our industry, you're one of the most active on social media. You've clearly made it a priority for you, and it seems that it seems like it certainly helped you with your progression, just from a knowledge standpoint and from a career standpoint. What made you what kind of made you decide to make that such a priority for you, and why do you think it's going to continue to become more and more important?
So I've always known that big companies, whether it was Coca-Cola or Procter and Gamble, had huge marketing and advertising budgets, and primarily that was on TV. And to get access to that was millions and millions of dollars. And if you look at, and I've always believed marketing works. So first you have to start with the premise that marketing works, right, and advertising works. So if you go there, and I think business has just proved that it does. So let's go there and say that it works. The next thing I say to myself is, okay, marketing and advertising works, and we, access to that was pricey. And, if DLC advertised on the Super Bowl, would it work depending on what we did? I think the answer is yes. I don't know that it would have the ROI that we need it to have, right? The price, it was overpriced for our needs, right? Will we get more people to our website? Could we sign a lease out of it? Could we get access to capital? Maybe all that could happen. I just don't know that the ROI would be there if we advertised on the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. But I heard someone say, a guy named Gary Vaynerchuk say that one time that the phone is the new TV, and the channels are no longer ESPN, ABC, NBC, and Fox. The channels are now LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat and Twitter. And it dawned on me, if that's where it's going, and that's free, and I could do the same thing that those companies were doing and spending millions and do it for free, I better go start doing this.
Yeah. Do you, so interesting. I mean, like we've are trying to grow our social media presence, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, that type of stuff. And you're right. It is and us being a small company, it's a very cost-effective way to do that. So, I mean, we do buy ads and on LinkedIn to get stuff.
Yeah, we do as well.
Yeah, y'all do. I was going to ask. That's what I was going to ask. You do that as well, or is it all grown kind of organic?
Yeah, we have a paid social media budget.
Yeah, nice. What with social media, where do you think kind of the next progression of it is? I mean, because I feel like even over the past 15 years, it's changed so much. With it started off with Facebook, and then you've got YouTube and Instagram and Snapchat and all this. Now TikTok. Where do you think the best avenues are to pursue for our industry, and where do you think it's kind of going from here?
Man, you give me questions that I struggle to give concise answers. And I'm normally big on my team. I'm big on my team on giving concise answers. And so this is going to be long-winded, and I'm going to steal another one from Gary Vaynerchuk, which is if I use the TV example, the thing that you're playing for is attention.
Right.
Right. And so you're looking for attention, and right now people's attention is on social media. That attention is on social media is fleeting. It may be there. It could go away tomorrow. Mm-hmm. What the thing that I'm focused on is enhancing mine and DLC skills at getting people's attention, whether it's on social media today, if it goes back to print, whatever it is, to have a platform where you're good at getting people's attention. If you're good at getting people's attention through marketing and advertising, the platform that it happens on will be irrelevant, right? Social media is no different than other advertising, print or TV, in the sense that it's a form of trying to get people's attention. If you're good at getting attention, the platform will be less relevant. And so I think the first part, how I answer that, is you need to get good at getting people's attention. If you're good at getting people's attention, then you're not beholden to any platform.
Yeah.
The second thing I would say is that, and that's why platforms are constantly going to change, and there'll be another TikTok and there'll be another LinkedIn and there'll be another thing. I think, being futuristic. So I think depending on your purpose, right? I think it could be many different platforms in what you're trying to do and how you're trying to get people's attention. If you're trying to produce like deep thought leadership on the industry, LinkedIn's a good place. If you're trying to target small businesses, maybe Facebook and Instagram are a good place. Mm-hmm. If you just want to continue to have a dialogue with an audience, maybe Twitter's a good place. So it depends on what type of attention you want to get and how you want to get that attention.
Yeah.
I think futuristic, I think there's no doubt that voice is coming. And, Alexa, Google Home, they want to get in your home. They're getting in your home. And I think that voice is coming. I think that's why I'm big on our podcast, that we have, Retail Retold. I think it's great. Yeah. You have a podcast, because I think voice is coming. Consuming on social media, right? People go fast. People are always searching for time. Yep. At some point, it's going to take too long.
Yeah.
Voice is the answer to that. And so I think, if you can envision a place where, if you think about, call it, all these apps are on your phone. Think about all these apps built in on Google Home and Alexa. Mm-hmm. And that's how you're communicating versus through your phone with your thumbs.
Yeah. Yeah. That's just, I guess, give Google and Amazon more control over, over everybody. That was great. That was great. So also, I know, want to change it up here a little bit, and talk about kind of athletics and how that helped you. I played football in college. One of my other partners played football in college. He actually played it in the NFL for a couple of years. My other partner played soccer in college, and two guys that worked for us. One of them played golf, and the other one played football. So athletics has always been a very important part of all of our lives, and I think it has helped shape who we are and given us the work ethic that we have. And you growing up being a wrestler at the collegiate level, how did athletics help shape you as who you are, and how does it continue to benefit you as you continue with your career outside of athletics?
Yeah, I think it's probably the biggest impact on my business life that's outside of business, right? It's been hugely beneficial for me. It was the greatest teacher. Athletics shaped me in ways that I couldn't shake if I tried. So clearly work ethic. And when I think about work ethic, I don't just think about punching in and punching out. Like, people might say, like, this guy's got a strong work ethic. He shows up every day, and he's here at 6 and he leaves at 6.
Yeah.
That's commitment. That's different than work ethic. I think work ethic is really about like the perseverance to push through to get what you want to get. And so that's what athletics taught me, right? I always had like some goals, and I wanted to get to this next goal.
Yeah.
And, I went to the state tournament in wrestling multiple years, and I had a great youth career. I was state champ in youth, and I never did worse than third in the state. And I was always like 60-2 is my record. I had a good high school career.
Yeah.
I was state runner-up in a high school American, and I had an okay college career. But one of the things that shaped me the most was I took second in the state my senior year, and I should have won it, and I ended up wrestling that guy in college, and I did beat him. But
Nice.
that made me so hungry. I often think that if I had won that match and I lost 5-4, I truly believe my life would be different today.
Yeah.
It made me hungry in every aspect of my life. I think that I had such a chip on my shoulder after that match, and it being my last match in high school and it being over.
Mm-hmm.
I had such a chip on my shoulder to be successful that in everything, that I really think that changed my life. And if I had won that match, my life would be different. I don't know how it would be different, but it would be different. And I lost 5-4, and I think everything happens for a reason. And I think that's one that happened for a reason. So work ethic, just staying hungry. I think for me, I've done some things that are so extreme to my body that always make like some of the things that I'm doing, in the business world feel easier. Losing 10 pounds in a day was a regular thing. And, the things you had to do that were extreme. The mental toughness that it brought and gave me. Then I think one that has really helped me with sports, and I talk about a lot, is not the ability to survive under pressure, but to thrive under pressure. I was put in some really over my life in, I played football, baseball, wrestled throughout, and wrestled year round, and ended up being my best sport. And that's what ended up me doing that in college. But I was in so many like really high pressure moments that at that point in my life were so impactful to my life that it helped me be able to operate in high pressure moments in the business world. And that was probably, if I was going to take away one thing that athletics has shaped for me, it's the ability to thrive under pressure. Even that match that I lost probably even enhanced that skill to be able to thrive under pressure. And you just think about wrestling, right? And to me, it was no big deal. But as I look back and talk about it, in the state tournament, which I wrestled 3 times, it was me on a mat with another guy and 15,000 people watching us. Right. Just really high pressure scenarios. And I think that that really helped me.
Yeah. That I gotta ask you, what was the so you said you beat the guy that beat you on your last match in high school, you beat him in college. What was the score, or did you pin him? What was the score when you beat him in college?
It was like 5-4. It was just
5-4.
Flipped.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
It was yeah.
No, I know it's sports is I think you're right. It teaches you have so many high pressure situations, and I think one of the things it taught me is that you just have to do it. Even it may suck for a while, but you got to do it. I remember we had a play in college where I played tackle, offensive tackle, and we had a play in college where I remember it was 4 and 5. That was all it's called. And we only ran it like once a season, but you had to get a specific defensive front before you run it. But it required the tackle to go all the way to the middle linebacker and block the middle linebacker. So it's a long way. And I remember it was always dicey whether you're going to get there or not. And it was always you always knew it was going to hurt when you got there.
Yeah.
So you got to do what you can to get there, because the play's coming, the running back's coming right behind you. So you just had to do whatever you could to get there and just throw yourself. I remember like jumping to try to try and get the middle linebacker, and it hurt, but you just got to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting you said that you're a great high school wrestler and a good college wrestler. I know.
I said I was a great youth wrestler. Okay. Good high school. Okay, college.
Okay, college. I gotcha. But I think that's I was talking with one of my buddies that a few weeks ago, and we were talking about athletics and everything, and he said, and just talking about teammates and everything, and he said, yeah, he was like, yeah, he did not play sports in college, and I was like, yeah, I was like, you never, you all you cared about, he was like, yeah, he's like, oh, all you cared about with your teammates was whether they were good or not. And I said, no, I was like, I was like, you didn't even really care if they were good. You cared about how hard they worked and what their work ethic was. And I'd never even thought about it, but when he said that, that kind of dawned on me that I know even some of the guys that I played with who didn't play a whole lot, as long as they worked hard and got everything they could out of themselves. That's all that you really cared about.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
You mentioned getting more out of themselves. I think one of the things that athletics teach you is, so in sport, whether it's a game, a practice, you do it so much. There's so many hours, right? I wrestled from 6 years old to I was 21, and then I helped youth wrestlers after that. And I had a lot of opportunities to exceed my own expectations.
Yeah.
And, and that was a powerful lesson, like that you could probably do more. And people hold themselves back. They put mental limiters on themselves, and sports help you get past those mental limiters. You just need one break, and you have a lot of opportunities to create that break. Mm-hmm. And, we used to, my high school football coach used to always say, it might not look good on paper, but that's why we play the game. and I love that line, because it's like March Madness for the NCAA. If the top seed was like really supposed to win, then there's no point in playing the game.
That's right. Yeah.
But everyone, my dad always used to say, let's see what happens with a referee and a whistle. Yeah. And so, and things change with a referee and a whistle. And so I think that's another great lesson that, you can, there's a lot of people who didn't have athletics and they just are like, I don't know if I can do that, or I'm not going to try that. And I think athletics show you that you can break through barriers that you thought were not possible and get more out of yourself. And that's something that's really helped me in the business world, in knowing that, that the outlook might not look rosy, but I'm going to push through because I'm going to test myself here. And because I know I've done that for decades prior, and a lot of times you fail. You might take second in the state and lose 5-4 in your last match. Yeah. But there are other times where you exceed your own expectations and what you might have, and you do more than you ever thought were possible. And I think that is something that sports do all the time.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And it does, it gives you, because you're like you said, you're constantly having to break through to the next, to the next level and get out of your comfort zone. I mean, like you could have probably stayed at Sherwin-Williams for 30 years and, had a pretty successful career, but you had the confidence in yourself to take the chance and try something else and push yourself. No, that's great. That's great. Well, let me ask you, we got, so the last bit of the Palomar Perspective, we call the common area. So got just a few kind of random questions for you. First one is, I know you have the Retail podcast that you do. Aside from your podcast and our podcast, of course, what is your favorite podcast to listen to? And it doesn't have to be real estate related.
It was Game Changers, the Jason Jennings podcast. He's the famous business author.
Yeah.
And he talks a lot on leadership. He's written many books, and it's a great podcast. He recently, this year, just passed away. And so the podcast is still being run by the host of that, which was this guy, Dale Dixon. But that was my favorite podcast. And if you're looking for business intelligence and self-development and leadership concepts. It's an unbelievable. It's like 20 minutes an episode, but it's jam-packed with amazing stories.
Yeah, nice. Do you have any kind of non-business podcasts that you like? Just kind of random topics?
I've got about 5 or 6 fantasy football podcasts downloaded, and so I would, my favorite one is the CBS Fantasy Football Podcast.
Nice. All right, great. What is your what's your favorite book, and what did you take away from it that were some good lessons that you got from it?
Man, I have so many. I read a ton of books. Pre-pandemic, I was reading like 2 books a month. Coming out of high school, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That like really opened my eyes to thinking differently. One of the books early in my career that was really helpful was Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, which is the story of success, which I think is a really fascinating book to open your mind that there's other paths. The reasons of success are not what you think. And so that's a good lesson. And then, recently I'm a fan of David Goggins, and he wrote the book Can't Hurt Me. Mm-hmm. And I just connect with that guy's just pure mental toughness. And, I love his line that he says when people talk to him. He's like, listen, I'm not gifted. I'm just driven.
Yeah.
And to me, that's powerful. And that's a lesson from that. Not gifted, just driven.
I like that. I haven't read any of Goggins' books, but I follow him on social media, and he it's hard to not get fired up when you listen to anything that guy says.
Yeah, if someone were like, who's the toughest guy in America, I think you could coin him that. He was on the Joe Rogan podcast, which is just, insane what this guy's talking about. And so, but I that quote sticks with me, right? When people like, not gifted, just driven.
Yeah, I like that one. I like that. So last question. You were a wrestler, and I remember, and wrestlers have to do some crazy things to make weight. You mentioned that dropping 10 pounds in a day was a common thing. And I remember in college when we'd be practicing football in the stadium, the wrestling team would run the stadium steps. I mean, and Harvard's football stadium, it's not huge, but it's not small, and it's like straight up. So it's like 37 sections, like 50 rows up. And we'd watch these guys while we were practicing. I mean, they'd start at section 1, up and down, section 2, up and down, go all the way around the stadium. And I remember one off season, me and a couple guys, we decided that we were going to do that one day, and to train. And I remember I got through 1.5 sections and tapped out. I was like, there's no way. So made me have a even more of an appreciation for what wrestlers do to themselves. So when you were wrestling, what was kind of the craziest thing you ever did as far as having to train or cut weight or anything like that?
So this is an easy one, and I've told the DLC team the story. So I mentioned I was a great youth wrestler. I was my dad took me all over the country. I was wrestling youth tournaments in Oklahoma and everywhere. And so when I was in 8th grade, I had the opportunity to go to this training at Lehigh University. And it was like a 2-week thing. And there was some really good youth wrestlers. There was some good high school wrestlers, college wrestlers, guys who were training for the Olympics. It was a really cool experience for me being in 8th grade, and I was going into 8th grade. And we were all training together. I wasn't like really wrestling the college kids. I was wrestling some of the high school kids, but the 7 or 8 like really good youth kids that were from all over Pennsylvania, New York, and New Jersey at the time. And so day 1 was we did this hill sprint thing. And so Lehigh's up on a mountain. There's a lot of hills at Lehigh University. And so we get to the bottom of the hill, and he goes, the guy stands at the top. He goes, you got to sprint up the hill. Just sprint up the hill. He times it. And he goes, you guys can run it faster than that. And so you go back down, and then you sprint up the hill, and you do a little better. He goes, you guys can do faster than that. And so we go down, and he goes, sprint up the hill. And he goes, all right, this is the time. So now we have to do 10 in this time.
Yeah.
Every time you miss, you start back at 1.
Ooh.
So we started at like 9:30. It was like noon, and we kept missing.
And
People were walking.
How long was this hill?
Man, it was, 200 feet.
Yeah.
It was huge,
Yeah.
but it was steep more than it was long.
Yeah.
And, at like 12:30, people are wanting water breaks. Their legs are on fire, and people are quitting and walking off.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal and what you had to embrace was you weren't going to finish, right? It was not physically possible, but you had to keep going.
Yeah.
And we ended that at like 3:00, and we never got to it, but it was sprints for hours and hours and hours, hill sprints. It was just a mental toughness drill.
Yeah.
That was one of the most physically, mentally draining things I ever did, but one of the best lessons I ever learned. And that's one of the ones that I learned, like, even when you think you can't go, you can go.
Yeah. So how many kids started it, and how many finished? How many were still going?
There was like 30 who started. There was probably less than 15 that finished.
Yeah. So y'all ran sprints up a hill for like 6 hours.
Yeah, it was crazy.
That is brutal. It
was crazy. It was just a total mental toughness that even when you think you've got nothing, you have more in you.
Yeah. Another great lesson from sports.
There you go.
Right. Well, great. Well, Chris, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it, and look forward to hopefully seeing you in person in the not too distant future.
Thanks for having me. This was great. Keep it up, man.
I appreciate it.